This week we have a chat with Perth Standlick, an ex-QS surfer who is completely foil brain now. He's obsessed with foiling and in particular downwind foiling. He loves going fast and chases the biggest, gnarliest conditions he can find. He's a very talented waterman, and I was stoked to have a chat with him. Finally, we've been meaning to do this for almost probably a year now, and it's been good to finally get him on and go through the experiences. During the chat, he confesses to me that the first successful ocean run he did was actually with me, and it was after only 2 successful bay runs. So I thought he'd been doing it for months, and I took him out on a sort of 30-knot, 3-meter swell day, and a really gnarly conditions from Manly to Palm Beach, and he made it to Whale Beach, which was an awesome effort for his first ocean run. But during the chat, you'll notice how rattled I was that was when I realized that was his first run. On this chat, we go through a bit of technique he gives a bit of advice on being underfoiled versus overfoiled and what's better depending where you're at. He also talks about foil sizes, talks about, I guess, training and how to dial in SUP foiling, because it's different. For him, he was completely new to SUP. But yeah, it was a really fun chat and lots of good little nuggets of wisdom in there. This one I kept to about an hour, which has been good for me. The last one was closer to 2 hours. So a little bit shorter chat, short and sharp. But yeah, super fun one. Good bit of advice from Perth, talking about especially some of the new foils from GoFoil, which is always cool to see. And yeah, if you're enjoying these chats, make sure you tell your mates, tell your friends, share the froth. Hit me up if you want to learn to downwind foil. Either just message me directly or check out my website, kcoz.com, or check out the Coach Casey Club. And then you can do online coaching or training with me. There's a whole online course from learning to foil from the very beginning all the way through to downwind foiling, to jumps with winging, all this sort of stuff. So if you want to learn to foil, you want to learn to downwind foil, check out the Coach Casey Club. And that's basically what is paying for me to do these podcasts. But I'm just doing it for the love of it. I love it. I'm frothing, as you can probably tell. But yeah, let's get into it. Here's the Casey Catch-Up with Perth. All right, welcome to the Casey Catch-Up. We've got Perth, who I've been trying to get on, and I don't know why we haven't been able to do it. We just haven't, but we've done it. We've locked each other in. We're going to chat for an hour. We're going to talk about downwind foiling and give us a little intro, Perth. What's your background? How'd you get into foiling and downwind foiling and all that sort of jazz? And what about before foiling? What were you doing?
Before foiling, I was surfing. Did the QS, chasing a dream for a few years. It's sort of burnt out, and hey, stop it. Bit burnt out, and just wanted something else to do. Saw everyone in Hawaii doing it, and I was just like, that just looks like the best thing ever. I need to learn to do that. I liked snowboarding, and just looked like the way to get it, snowboarding in the ocean. And went and got myself an MFC, and because that's what Kyle Lenny was riding, and yeah, away I went.
So when was this? What year are we talking?
This is
pretty early days.
3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably close to 4 years ago now.
2019.
I'd say.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah. Just played around on the prone mostly for about a year, and then started seeing clips of people downwinding. Started learning to downwind on the prone, and just doing shore runners, a few random off the cliffs, trying to go from bay to bay, things like that.
Yeah, tell us about that. Like, I guess because a lot of people, obviously, eastern suburbs is a pretty high cliff area and low beach area. So you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of
paddling.
Well, potential, but like you're not going, like, it's not worth doing a run just from one end of the beach to the other, because it's only like
longest beach is like a K.
Yeah,
and it's a kilometer along the boardwalk, and the ocean's shorter. It's like 850 or something meters. So it's pretty pointless, and it's always an annoying walk, and you're just battling against the wind, trying to get back to where you started from and jumping off. It just sucks.
Yeah.
So it's a definitely worth doing ocean stuff if you got to ski. And then there's only one place to launch a ski and get back. You have to go back there because you can't come into the harbour on a ski. It's a bit of a nightmare unless you have a SUP. The SUP is just the key to being able to do it in Sydney.
I remember seeing a clip of you doing a downwinder on I guess it was like a rubber duck or a thundercat, like in the between North and South Edge, like the entry to Sydney Harbour.
Yeah. I bought this old fiberglass thing. It was like $2,000, and but it had this massive like 75 or 80 horsepower engine on it, so it just hooked. When we're learning how to downwind, we just went out into the heads when it was howling suddenly and just tried to see how far we could get.
Yeah. Loose. That's a
Yeah.
pretty sketchy part of water. Like I've only gone across the harbour like once or 2 or 3 times on the foil, and it's
There's some lumps
big,
and bumps going everywhere.
there's some big bumps, and that's, I guess, leads us into the next thing, I guess. So the difficulties in learning in the eastern suburbs of Sydney is, like I mentioned before, lots of cliffs, short beaches, and basically, as you just mentioned, bumps everywhere. There's a lot of backwash going on.
Yeah.
So I guess for the prone, I guess it's less of an issue because you're just sort of catching a wave and pumping out. But for the downwind, like for the longer downwinders on the SUP, how was your learning? Like how did you go progressing to SUP? Because I don't think you had much of a SUP background in being a
I
QS surfer.
couldn't even stand on a SUP.
Yeah.
Could not stand on a SUP. I remember talking to you, and you sort of told me which one to get, and I just got the Sonova Aviator. It's like 6.0 by 27.
Yeah, 26 or
It's
27.
just like
Yeah.
a disc. It's
Oh,
crazy,
looking
mate,
back,
looking
it's
at that.
like,
It's like, what were we doing?
yeah,
We're
fully.
not making it easy for ourselves.
No.
But that's what I started on. There was there's probably 6 weeks of major frustration paddling, just doing it nor'easters, just paddling out to sea, going from North Bondi to Bronte, just cursing. Just get to the beach, like, this thing's broken. I hate this. This sucks.
Yeah.
And
What were you struggling with the most? Like, was it
couldn't
balance
get
on
out
the
of the
board?
water.
Yeah, because couldn't get up. Yeah.
Yeah, and that just would lead to more and more frustration, and then poor paddling technique. You just didn't know what to do, how to do it at all. There's no real videos online. There's no one around where I live to do it with, or even just teach me how to paddle. And then I think finally I went up with you, and I think we surfed the
long reef.
Longery, something.
Yeah.
It was kind of big and wild, and I don't know, got a bit more of an idea of how to paddle. And then went down to bay surf just on a big day, just took this up and was learning how to paddle it more, and just started putting time into just paddling in the ocean, catching waves on it, getting stronger, and just getting better at even paddling in a straight line. And that was the turning point, really. Met a guy called Nick Branch, who's a local guy down at Cronulla, and he goes, "Oh, you look like you can foil you can foil. Can you downwind?" I was like, "No, I've been trying for weeks. I cannot figure it out." And he goes, "Oh man, it's easy. I'll take you to this spot in Botany Bay. You'll get it straight away." I was like, "Really? You can downwind?" I was like, "Dude, you're like 50 and I can't even paddle. I'm dying." Like, he's like, "No, man, it's easy. You'll get used to it straight away." So next Suddenly went to Botany, and at this point I'd never got up on foil downwinding, and he went out. Him and another guy was with us, and they got started before me, and then I just popped up, and I was going, and I think I did the whole run and didn't come down.
Yeah.
And one of the boys just beat me over the run, but I ended up beating Mick. He picked the wrong wing, and I was just like on a bigger one, I think I was on a Uni 210.
Yeah.
And that was quite good for the bay. And I beat Mick by like 20 minutes, and he's like looking at me like, "You said you'd never done this. How did you? What happened there?" And then we did another run. I got up straight away, and and beat the other guy who's, I think he'd done the Molokai or some Maliko runs and stuff like that.
Oh, was
They
it
both look,
it would have been Tim Wise, I bet.
yeah, yeah. It was
Timmy
Timmy.
Wise. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, what? This isn't right. What? This is how you.
Yeah, it's not
They
fair.
just couldn't believe that I
Yeah.
somehow got there in one run. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know, maybe I just the wings right, or I don't know. I just
Yeah.
once I'm up, I'm fine. I know
Yeah.
I'm basically not going to come down. Like it's not hard to not make a mistake
Yeah.
in the bay, and then the next day was still howling, but the surf was like 10, 15 foot, and you're like, yeah, let's go, let's do Manly to Palmy. I was like, yeah, I can downwind now.
Yeah.
I know how to do this.
Oh, that's when you came with me.
Yeah, that was
Oh, you were
like
through.
the
Yeah,
day
right.
before. I'd only just learned how to get up out of the water.
Yeah.
And
So
so I thought I'd just do 30 Ks in 15-foot swell.
okay, that's actually. I'm glad we've had this discussion because I was under the impression that you'd been there at the time when you came over the first time. I was under the impression that you'd done a couple, and like the way you paddled up on those, like you pretty much paddled up on lumps, like downwind. It wasn't even windy that day. That's why we were surfing on the SUPs, and you paddled up on a few lumps. I'm like, oh, he's ready. If there was wind, we would have been doing it. And then you came over that next time, and you're like, yeah, Manly to Palmy. Yeah, I'm like, sick. Let's do it. And yeah,
That was my first ever ocean run.
that was your first ever or successful ocean run, I guess, because
Yeah. Well, first time getting out of the water in the ocean.
Oh, yeah, because you hit me up and you were so confident. I'm like, yeah, let's go for it in Manly to Palmy. I'm like, dude, I'm stoked to be able to do it with someone. So I was like, yeah, let's go. I remember, yeah, and it was like, and you did good. Like I remember we both stopped off Longreef, and it was so big.
Was about
you were like
out the sea.
2Ks off the point at Longreef. I was like 500 meters off and you were like, yeah, I'm out there too. I'm like, where are you? It's like, oh, let's just keep going because we had phones and stuff. So we
never going to see each other.
Yeah, we never saw each other. And we kept going and yeah, then I stopped off. Maybe I just kept going after Banged Out. Like we went all the way to Palmy, and you came in at Whaley, and I think I was giving you. I think I was giving you a hard time like a month ago, saying, "Oh, you didn't even make it to Palmy." You're like, "Dude, that was my first ocean run," and I honestly I only know that now. Like that was.
Yeah, right.
You were.
I thought you knew that.
Nah. Full in the deep end. That was impressive.
That was the first attempt. I was like, I just got to do this. It's such good conditions. Well, it's just windy.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's funny because ever since then, they've basically been my favorite conditions when it's 6 foot or bigger and just howling suddenly and just raw, like real raw and just wild. And I don't know. That's always the funnest for me.
Yeah, well, we did another one. I guess it was earlier this year or end of last year, and similar bigger conditions. And I remember going past one of the bombies, and I normally go.
Yeah, we nearly caught one.
Yeah, I sort of normally go around it, and you like went right over the boil kind of thing, like all the zone, and yeah, you got a proper bomb, and I was like, this guy's crazy. Oh, let's back up. Like that's a bit of a realization for me. I was like, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He's done a few, but you'd literally done 2 botany runs, which I wouldn't even qualify that as
downwinding.
Well, like no disrespect to botany runs, it's a great way to learn, and it's probably good to talk about this now. Like
it's the training wheels.
It's the progression.
You've got training wheels on.
Let's talk about what the difference was really. Like so, the difference, like especially eastern suburbs downwinders, in the northeasterlies, there's a lot of backwash. Basically swells coming from multiple directions. You go to a bay run in a big southerly or in any direction in the bay, there's no swell. There's just wind swell. So it's just
it's easy.
Yeah, wind chop generated from one direction. So yeah, you toiled away in the ocean conditions. And for anyone listening, I guess explain the difference. Yeah, don't do the ocean
do
first.
The bay runs.
Yeah.
Straight away. Don't even bother doing ocean. It's going to ruin your self-confidence. And you're going to like hurt your shoulders, your hips, just everything from burning to everything tensing up trying to stand on the board because you just don't know what you're feeling, don't know what to look for.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah.
Would not recommend doing ocean runs at the start.
Balance is harder. Reading the bumps is harder. Once you're up is harder. It's like everything's harder. Whereas a bay run, generally bay runs start in like completely flat water. And as you go, the bumps gradually get bigger. So it's like the perfect intro to downwinding because it builds as you go. the other thing, I guess, so you were on the Unifoil 210, the original, the Hyper. They've just released
Mm.
the Hyper 2, I think. But how did you find that for learning? Was it, in hindsight, would you have gone bigger or what?
Um, I don't think I needed to go bigger. That Uni 210 Hyper seemed to be pretty versatile. Like it turns quite well, it glides well. It's got a pretty good top speed. Um, I remember getting up to around low 40s once, but I think it was when I was falling off, like breaching.
Flying through the
But
air.
yeah, but I think like I remember it having a good low end speed, and I think that's really crucial when you're learning. Just so you've got that time between coming out of an ocean bump, it could nearly ride swell lines, and just that moment where you've got to just make a decision whether you're going left, right, over the back, try and push down the front of where you are, or you've just got to actually make a confident decision on what you're doing. And having that bigger wing, it's about 1285, just having that glide and time to not stall out is all that matters, I think.
Mm. Yeah, you want to be able to make mistakes and not come down off foil
Yeah.
when you're learning. Like
Mm.
it's once you're up, it's hard to get up. So once you're up, you want to be staying up as best
Yeah.
you can. And it really is that balance of big, big, and I guess a smaller big. And it depends on your paddling ability. If you can paddle up a smaller, bigger foil, like a Uni 210 versus a Maliko 280, which is I sort of classified as like the slowest, biggest from what I've used anyway. Or the
Yeah.
it's
It, it's hard for me to even imagine riding anything bigger than a 210.
yeah,
Or
yep,
like for me, like I'm with GoFo now, and the P&L 185
mm, yeah,
is, I couldn't imagine riding anything bigger than that in the ocean.
yeah,
Even the bay, I use that P&L,
yeah.
and I've even cut the tips off it, made it a little bit smaller, and it turns really well now.
That's one of the
And
biggest
it's
disadvantages of that wing. It's goes so well in a straight line and doesn't seem to turn. But
mm,
yeah, I was chatting to a few crew down in Merimbula about the P&L 185 you cut, and you said it's the wing.
yeah, I like it. I really like it. I go back to it a lot now.
Yeah.
But
So how much did
mm,
you cut off it? Let's dive into that.
uh, I probably took, obviously the upturns. I took that off, and then I took probably another just 10 to 15 mil off. I could even take a whole lot.
Yeah, not much at
I
all.
I cooked the first cut, so I had to take more off, and then I had to make it. I just made it sort of the same shape on the other side, so it ended up being about 10 or 15 mil.
Yeah, there you go. So bugger all. But and
Mm.
did you have to like was it just did you have to seal it or you just cut and sanded and
No,
done?
no, cut sand done. I think I got just. I could feel it was soft, but it was still had a fiberglass layer over it. It was still
Hmm.
sealed,
Yeah,
so I was borderline on the edge of what I thought was probably about to be a lot more work.
yeah, yeah. That's the trick. Don't cut too far. Then you got to glass it up and all that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So let's go back to I'm still like amazed at that first run that you're like, yeah, that's you like hit me up like so confident, like you'd done heaps of ocean runs. And you didn't even ask, you didn't even say like a lesson. You're like, let's just go. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to go with someone. And so we just did it. So I think we paddled out and you're like, how far out do we go? And I was like, oh, I'll just, wherever. And you got up
Yeah,
pretty soon. Like, I think I paddled up once and pumped out a little. And then you got up like, I don't know, 2 minutes after. Like, it wasn't a long
yeah. I
time.
wasn't. I
No.
could still see you for about 10 seconds. Then I was focusing on what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, what was the biggest difference? Like, I guess for you, it wasn't a big difference, but what do you think? Like, I guess the Bay run obviously got your eye in. And then the ocean run, do you think that like launching at Manly was easier than like an Eastern Suburbs run or
Um,
just windy
it's
enough?
it's just the wind. I think the launching at Manly, you've got no headlands
Yeah.
creating backwash or anything. It's just a straight, clean line, and you've just got headlands to look for and point at.
Mm.
and that's it. You don't. I feel like you don't hit any. There isn't any backwash till
Like long
like
reef DY sort of area. Yeah.
yeah, and then even then you hardly even get any. You have to be in at Longy to get any of the backwash,
For sure. And you
and
weren't
then
in, you were 2Ks offshore.
yeah, I didn't even know where I was.
Yeah,
I
you're
like
a long way
at
out.
one stage I laid down and started paddling in because I was looking at the headlands and it just all looked like the same and it was about 10 mil high. I was like, oh my god, I'm so far out to sea. What have I put myself in?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, glad you had a phone. That's for sure. That was a valuable piece of
Yeah,
equipment that day because it was
yeah,
even if we were 50 meters apart, I don't think we could have seen each other. But
no.
we were kilometers apart. You're like, yeah, I'm off long reef.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So and again, obviously like the cool thing I guess is like you knew how to foil and like Mick was saying you're saying you once you're up you knew what to do, which I guess is kind of rare because a lot of foilers that are proficient like surf foilers once up on foil in downwind are sort of chasing the wrong bumps. So how much downwind like had you downwinded anything else before? Had you driven a boat? Like sometimes driving a boat downwind helps, like little things like that. But what do you
Um, I my the way I read it was like anything can give you energy to move forwards. So as long as you're going pretty straight, or at least on like a 45 across,
mm-hmm.
there's going to be something right behind it. So it doesn't matter as long as you don't turn too hard off the back, you're probably going to be all right.
Yeah.
That was all I thought, and you just lean forwards, and that would give you more speed too.
Yeah. Yeah,
It was just
especially with the older foils.
yeah, make an early decision and stick to that.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
all great advice. Like
you're
I think,
done.
and what foil were you using that day we went out? Were you on the 210?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. That's you would have been majorly overfoiled, I would have imagined.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh yeah.
yeah. But better off being overfoiled than not get up, which is.
Mm.
But even still, I think that's still yeah. I'm still yeah. That's impressive on the 210 in those can like it was big surf. So the reason I get do you want to explain why big surf is not always the best um, way to
Oh, it's
learn.
quite often harder to get up
Yeah,
because the swell takes away the bumps to an extent
yeah,
when you're trying to paddle up, and it's definitely harder to read them because there's just big swells coming over underneath you,
yeah,
lifting you up. So you kind of get the sensation that you're going through a huge bump where your tail drops down and you lose your speed paddling. And you got to start paddling hard again to start even just moving forwards. And then you might miss a bump because you've slowed down because of a swell going past you. And it's rare there isn't backwash coming at you because there's
yeah,
just so much swell refractions. And they're always just stormy rank days. So it's probably the southeast swell, the south swell. It's probably just been a northeast swell or something. So it's now the new southerly front's taken over. There's just usually so much going on.
yeah.
It's
The
hard to
other
slow your mind down and just go, this is all I'm looking for.
yeah, and the other thing is that the period of the swells compared to the periods of the wind swells, I guess, like the wind blowing. Um, Generally the south swells are, on the east coast here somewhere between 10 and 15 seconds. But whereas I think that the best sort of downwind conditions period is like closer to 7 or 8 seconds
Yeah,
wind
yeah,
swell.
for sure.
And if you think about it, in the space of like, I guess 100 meters for a 10-second or 15-second period, there's going to be like maybe 3 good bumps. For a 9 or 7 second period, there's going to be like 5 or 6 good bumps. So it almost doubles the available options to foil.
Yeah,
Whereas,
it's easy to make mistakes and be totally fine.
yeah, exactly, because there's shorter distance between peaks. So it's yeah, the big days are super fun. Like when you like now, like they're the days that you and I both love. Um, the big open ocean, like big wind, big swell, and there's bombies to dodge. There's literally it's half surfing, half downwinding, and it's kind of everything.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
you go and you hit your top speeds where you're holding on and going, should I move further forwards on the board, or am I going to nosedive into the wave in front, or what am I going to do?
Yeah,
It's just really exciting. That's the most exciting bit, I reckon.
yeah. It's I guess it's like the open ocean runs with big swells are the double black diamonds, and then the bay runs are your groomers, your green runs.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and it's hard to go back to the groomers after experiencing the the thrill, I guess, of the open ocean double blacks because it's so
yeah.
tame.
It's
Yeah,
it's boring. It's definitely boring.
yeah. Um, how many bay runs have you done since? Since I guess.
Not many. I did a bunch in. We had some westerlies um, a few months ago, and I think it'd probably been 2 years before since I'd done a bay run. The only time I do a bay run is if it's with mates who are learning, and
Yeah,
I've got no way I can do anything else
yeah, yeah. Botany's pretty
because
good.
it's howling
That's
westerly.
yeah. That's kind of the beauty of the bay runs here in Sydney is that the westerlies they're not really much good for anything else. Um, I,
Yeah, we've got in one of our bay runs, you can start like 3Ks further up the river, where like a river joins Botany Bay,
mhm,
and it's real tricky because the bumps are small, like really small. And if you get up, you're pumping and working real hard to get through those first 3Ks to meet where everyone else would usually start.
yeah,
So it's a good little thing of training to lowering your heart rate, breathing, and really sourcing every bit of energy, like trying to ride as high as you can on your mast to get any little bit of energy out of the most micro little bumps. So like I do enjoy that aspect of the bay because it really teaches you where you can sit on the foil
mhm,
and what to listen for just before you breach, or
yeah,
like those little things. So if you do notice that sound in the ocean, it's lean forwards because you're definitely going to breach.
yeah,
Whereas the bay, you can almost breach and be all right. And you know that if you do breach, there's something 1 second behind you is pretty much going to get you up with the momentum you had from just before you breached.
yeah, yeah. The bay runs are forgiving. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah. It's so when did you start progressing down fall size? This is one thing I guess in like technique and I guess pointers I want to start doing more of in these podcasts is like talking about how you do stuff and like I guess one thing everyone does is they start in the bigger fall. So your big fall was the 210, and then what's the smallest foil you've done a downwinder on, and what's the smallest foil you've done a downwinder on now?
Uh, I used the GoFoil 850 a couple of months ago on
Mm-hmm.
downwinder, and I put a 13, the smallest KD tail I've got. It's a 13. It's a new 13R or something.
Yeah.
I used that, and like I hurt my knee, so I haven't been foiling much at all. I did my ACL cartilage and a small meniscus tear. That's about 4 months ago. So I've kind of only been downwinding when it's been good. And I
Pretty
couldn't resist trying
pretty
the 850.
pretty crazy you're downwinding with that sort of injury. How'd you do the injury?
I was lifting something at work, and I was kind of bending over and lifting it with my sort of shoulder. I had like a steel balustrade over my shoulder, trying to get it so one of the boys could screw it in. And I was on some stairs, and I had to like twist just a tiny bit, and my knee just popped out sideways. It's just,
And that's like 6 months out, isn't it? Like technically.
it probably will be. Yeah, I've probably got another 2 months to go. It's the ACL feels like it's tightened up, and the it's only the meniscus now. When I do a deep squat, it hurts.
Yeah.
So it's close, but I don't know. I'm going to get another MRI in a week or so and just see if maybe I do need surgery, or if I don't, or what.
How
but
do
everything
you
else is pretty close.
how do you foil with that kind of injury?
Don't turn.
Just straight and just
Just go straight.
I guess it's low impact. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I can't prone foil.
Hmm.
Even just carving on the prone foil, my knee feels like it's gonna. Well, did feel like it was gonna slip out
Yeah,
just because the ACL was stretched, so it had no, like, the bottom and top part of the knee felt like it would move separately, forwards and backwards.
yeah,
And so I mean, just going straight was fine. Like, just doing little calves when you're downwinding, that's about the max to what I felt like it was possible to do. And I couldn't put too much pressure through my back leg pumping. So I had to kind of like stand further up the board. I'll still have to stand further up the board and more front foot pumping
yeah.
instead of actually being able to leverage off the back foot and give it some to launch yourself forwards.
Yeah.
So it's gonna
So,
be nice to be able to foil properly again. But
hang on, so and you the smallest foil setup you tried was the 850 from Go Foil, and that's with an injured knee.
yeah, yeah.
You're crazy, mate. That's it's
Hey, if
it's
the conditions are good, you can't just sit there and let it go by.
100%. Yeah, yeah, fully. Okay, so that's got to be taken into consideration when we talk about this. But say the smallest foil size, 850 Go Foil with a bung knee. How did you find it? Like, what were the good things about it? What were the bad things about it?
It was one of the first times I'd ridden the 850, and at the start, I was finding I was getting close to stalling out a little bit too much.
Mhm.
But once I figured out what to do, like in the first couple of minutes, I figured out what to do, and then you could just basically sit on the swells. And I was pumping and paddling to stay on the swells at times, and then it would always just eventually it would outrun you. But over my 11K run, it's my local sort of run, Little Beta Bondi, I took 2 minutes off my previous faster time with having a shocker at the start, like not being able to read the bumps properly.
Yeah.
I took 2 minutes off it, and that
Wow.
was with the RS 1000 was my fastest time prior
Yeah.
with a bigger tail. Oh no, same tail with the same tail.
Yeah. That's
It
huge.
was
2 minutes over 11 Ks is that's a
yeah. I looked at my watch. I was like, no, that can't be right. I was like, hang on, wow, okay.
was
That was
was that the day that I did my run from Little Bay?
uh yeah, it could have been.
It
It
was a
could have been.
fast day. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
it was
quick
a good
conditions.
day.
Yeah, that was really good.
There was
Um,
like there was wind bumps, and then there was like a 6 to 8 second swell plus like
mm,
a 12 or 13 second full
yeah,
ground swell as well.
you can almost
So you
hop
kind of
between
had
them. Yeah,
yeah. There's heaps of options to not slow down.
yeah. Because that was going to be my next question. Obviously, with this smaller, faster foil, the issues seem to be that well, tell us like what's the potential like that can go wrong with using too small a foil?
You're working way too hard,
Yeah.
and you just cooked, and you just stop being able to read correctly
Mm,
because you're more focused on just not slowing down as opposed to just surfing and enjoying what you're doing. I think it becomes more of a workout instead of actually really enjoyable because you don't want to come down because you're on a small foil. You might struggle to get back up. So it's I don't know. It's definitely only use a small foil if the conditions are great.
mm,
Otherwise, it might not be as fun as using a bigger foil because you can still go fast on a big foil
yeah.
and you can still carve. But I would rather just be carving and enjoying myself than working real hard because probably in the long run, your average speed's only going to be a K or so different if you're on a bigger foil as opposed to a smaller foil and working real hard
Mm.
because you just always have speed on the bigger foil.
Yeah, exactly right. That well explained. I think a lot of people sort of rush down foil sizes too quick, and on those days that it's sort of marginal, they're convinced that they want
Mm.
to use that small foil, but it just makes it's a waste of a car shuttle to put simply.
Yeah,
Like you may as well go for a
yeah,
run. Like you're just pumping. You may as well be in flat water.
yeah,
Is kind of the feeling.
you're just working.
Yeah, working
Get to
so
the end,
hard.
and you're just dehydrated, and after like 20 minutes, you're just like, oh, get me some water.
Yeah,
Cold shower, you're just like sweating. Hang
yeah,
on, my dog's got this squeaky toy. Yeah, I often use I did use the 850 with a bigger tail. I've also got like a 15-inch tail and a 14-inch, just the standard go foil. But I have a 15-inch sort of like G10 one as well.
yeah,
That material G10. Um, I quite like the stiffness of that stuff.
yeah,
I've made a couple of tails myself. You just buy a sheet of it. It's like $50 or something, and you can make 3 tails that are about 15 inches wide
hmm,
out of the one sheet. And you just get the grinder and cut it, and then use like I've got a bench grinder, and you can just sand your edges, and quite quick and easy. I don't know.
yeah, yeah,
I
right.
look quite like one of my own tails for downwinding. It's good.
Yeah. So so
So
pairing the 850 with a larger tail, how'd that make the overall experience for downwind?
a lot more fun.
Hmm.
Like I rode the 850 in the surf, and I could pump it for 10, 12 minutes just in the surf. And then I put the little tail on, and I could do 3 minutes.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, it made a huge difference. And I
yeah,
think you only need an extra 10 seconds in the ocean
yeah, yeah.
to
To link that extra bump.
to make the difference, really.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a really good lesson for people when they are progressing down foil sizes. Generally speaking, with a big foil, I'd want to be pairing it with a smaller rear. But then as you go to a smaller size front foil, you'd probably put a bigger rear on to start with.
100%.
Yeah, because
100%.
when you go from a big to a small front wing, you change the stall speed a lot, and by using a bigger rear, you can lift the stall speed sort of back up. So by yeah, you just need to have that range close to the conditions that you're using.
Yeah, it needs to be done, I think, because unless the wind is amazing, quite often, even if the wind is amazing, you're going to have moments where it's not amazing during your run.
Mhm.
Like, it's very rare you get a run. Maybe it's just where I am. There's always these little spots that I know are coming, and they're just dead spots.
Yep, for
There's
sure.
always a minute or so of working hard, as
Yeah,
opposed to just, I think the nor'easters, you don't get those quite the same. When a nor'easter's strong, it's strong. But the southerly, you get that, and you're like, should I have used a bigger wing?
yeah,
Was I
yeah,
tripping? Like,
yeah, yeah.
what
Fully.
was I thinking? Like, I should have just made life easy.
Yeah, and when you're out there, you can't obviously it's too late to change, but you're out there like, oh, like
Yeah.
you ruin all the logistics you organize. Like you organize a lift, and like especially in the eastern suburbs, I know a few of the crew have been whinging about traffic for the shuttle.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
bad.
like you don't want you don't want your run to be pumping the whole way. You want it to be surfing and getting energy
Mm.
from a wave or swell or bump, not going faster than the wave, swell, or bump because your foil's too quick.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah. So what's your go to? I guess I've just come back from Perth, and there were lots of basically over there. The conditions are pretty good over there because it's really steep. Like the bumps are short and tall,
So
I
it's like a
guess.
nor'easter.
Yeah, it's like more like the Norrishes and the Sudleys. And the Sudleys here, they're like these big sort of long bumps. And you sort of get
Mm.
on one, you can hang with it for a long time. But if you miss that one, you're sort of pumping and linking around, and it's hard to. Yeah, it's much more like the Nor'easters, just shorter. It's shorter period swells basically, or bumps. I guess do you have a wing that you normally like to use for southerlies versus northeasterlies, or and then day runs?
Um, I often use the 1150. The RS 1150 is my standard go to for the ocean if I've been working all day and I'm tired and I want to just cruise and turn and have a really enjoyable run.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm feeling good, I'll go the RS, like the 1000 or the 850,
Mm-hmm.
where if I if I feel like I'm feeling like I want to try and set a PB for that distance, or uh, I don't know, like try and better my average speed over 11 k's or something, um, then that'll be my what I ride. But quite often I'll even jump back to the PNL if it's not like really good, or
Yeah.
if it's like 15 to 20 knots, I'll just go the PNL just for sheer safety,
Hmm.
because now mine turns. It doesn't turn that much worse than my 1150.
Hmm.
So I still have lots of fun, but
Yeah.
I know, like I pump that thing around in the surf for an hour and a bit, hour and 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something
Yeah.
last summer. So I know that if nothing happens, if the wind dies, I know I can just keep pumping, and I'm going to get to where I need to go, or I can get it back up out of the water and I'll be fine.
Mm. Yeah. Having that safety. Yeah. To me,
Yeah,
like
whether it's
the best downwind
confidence,
foil.
whether that's just confidence for me,
Yeah.
like
It's
in
got
my
a good
mind.
low end. That's, I guess it can go slow, and it seems to have a
Mm.
pretty good top end too. So like the range on a foil is really important. And I guess when you're swapping down wing sizes, I guess you want a bit of an overlap. You don't want it to be completely opposite. You don't want like your P&L 185 versus your RS 850. Like they're pretty different, but there probably is still a bit of an overlap where there's like a point where they you can be going as fast as you go on the or as slow as you go on the RS 850 is as fast as the is not so much slower than what the P&L 185 does. There's this sort of crossover point, and
Yeah,
the bottom and the top
it's
end change a little bit.
yeah,
Not
it's a funny one like that. It's like with the PNL, if it is, if I've sort of misjudged the conditions and it's gotten better when we're driving to where we're going to, like at the starting point, um, I'll be like holding on the PNL, trying to keep it down, and I'll be like almost nursing the top end speeds, and then the low end speeds are super mellow, and I don't even have to think.
yeah.
I can just stand there, basically just stand there and wait for the next bump to be
Mm,
there, be behind you, and you're off and going again.
yeah.
Whereas the 850, I'm not nursing top end speed. I'm just standing further forwards on my board and leaning more forwards, like doing a squat boost,
Yeah, the Scott boost.
and and just seeing how fast I can get this thing to go and how long I can stay at a top speed, just sitting on a swell line,
Yep.
just trying to pick the right line to go over the bumps while you're sitting on the swell
Yep.
for as long as you can. But the funny thing I've noticed is my average speed over the 11k is never more than a 3k diff like speed difference between the P&L and the 850.
Yep. Yeah. Which
Whereas
is
which it doesn't feel like it should be like that.
yeah.
But then you look at, I don't know, it's so strange. Like I don't, yeah, I think my top average speed for 11Ks it's usually on the twice I've done it, it's 26
Yep.
on the 850, but then it's usually 24 ish, 25 maybe once or twice on the P&L.
Yeah. That's bugger
It's
all
like,
difference. And like
yeah, it's like,
but it's such you explain two very different feelings and like I guess lines to take. Um
yeah, it's not the same run.
yeah,
It's
which
not the same run at all.
yeah, that's kind of the cool thing about it, right? So like, and this is one thing for those that are learning and wanting to progress down sizes, like what you explained is like to me, you're maybe 1 or 2 k's an hour slower on like the similar conditions, different
Yeah,
foils, but you were if you made a mistake on the PNL 185, you just sort of stood there and a bump came to you. Whereas
yeah,
on the RS 850, you kind of if you weren't hanging on to a bump, you're in a bit of trouble.
yeah. You're paddling and pumping.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
like, I don't know, it's weird because the 850's got a good low end for what it is,
yeah,
but the top end is so much higher than the low end that it feels so much better to be riding it going fast.
yeah,
So maybe I put too much effort in to just stay going fast,
yeah,
whereas I might not need to, but it just feels better. So
yeah.
I do it.
Yeah, I know
because I
exactly what you're saying. Because it can go so fast, as soon as you drop off, you feel like maybe you've dropped off 5 to 8 k's an hour. You're like,
yeah,
oh, I feel like I'm getting close
yeah,
to stall
I'm
speed.
gonna drop in the water.
I'm gonna keep going, and you just like start to paddle and pump. And I guess whereas the P&O 185, you're like near that stall speed, but you're so powered up, you just sort of
Yeah,
stand there, and it's like no stress. Like
yeah,
it's and it's just I feel like that's a feeling that you get when you're I guess you've got a pretty good understanding of the speed that your foil can go relative to the conditions, and the
mm,
comfort being slightly overfoiled versus the discomfort being slightly underfoiled makes the run a very different experience. Um,
yeah. Definitely, I'd way rather be overfoiled than underfoiled
yeah, yeah,
because
for,
you'll always get to the end of the run overfoiled.
yeah. That's 100%. I agree with you there. It's I think anyone who's learning take that advice because it'll if you go too small too soon, it'll be the worst thing ever. It'll be the worst experience every time.
Being on foil is faster than not being on foil.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the simple fact of it.
Yeah,
If you got too small a foil and you come down 3 times, and then there's someone on a bigger foil and they don't come down once, they will beat you,
yeah,
hands down. Doesn't matter what happens,
yeah,
they will beat you,
yeah. I did a
no matter what.
I did a race down in Victoria like 2018 on the Maliko 280, and it was like bugger all wind, which is why I used that foil, and it was a flat water start, and it was against all these surf skis and a few sups, but the surf skis were like who I wanted to try to beat, and I wasn't sure
Mm,
if the Maliko 280 would be possible, like would it be, if it would be possible to beat the skis, and I was
yeah,
first to the camp, and then I had to stop because I was so buggered because I actually pumped out flat water like a K, and then there
yeah,
was the wind line was over 500 meters out, so I just sort of cruised back out to the wind line off foil, got up on foil once I got to the wind line, and then I overtook all the skis
everyone.
that
Because
everyone
they're going stop, they're going stop, going. They can't link bumps.
sustain. Yeah, exactly.
They
The
have to just wait for the next one to hit them.
Yeah. So people always say, "Oh, it's so slow," using a big foil, and I'm like, yeah, relative to some things, but compared to every other watercraft,
You're going
the,
quick.
the slowest foil is still faster than anything else,
Yeah,
even with a head start. So it's yeah, the speed differential isn't so much. So I guess swallow a bit of that pride, swallow a bit of that ego to go really, really fast, and you'll go faster using a bigger foil than you will
yeah,
going.
for sure.
Yeah. Um, Forget about max speed is my other bit of advice. Go for
Mm,
average because, like you said,
definitely.
one
It's
drop
the
and yeah,
hardest to improve.
yes, exactly. Yeah. Um, let's talk about that squat boost that I think Kane talked about. But you've been doing it for longer than he's been talking about it. Um, the when I've downwinded with you, the lines you're taking, they're pretty aggressive, like straight, I guess, up and over, and not so much like I guess I sort of classify sort of 3 different lines up and over, so straight, and then traversing, so you're on the same bump, you're going left or right, and then there's peeling off and going one of the bumps behind. Um, when I foil with you, Perth, there's not many peeling off moments. It's either traversing or up and over. I feel like, um,
I do my absolute best to never peel off.
yeah,
My goal every time I go out is to at least to be able to overtake a swell bump or something.
yeah,
Like you get on a swell and you like pump down it for as long as you can and try and go up and over the next one. Like that's, I don't know, it's nearly impossible to do it. But that's always the goal, to just like, I don't know, go faster and get over bumps in front of you and overtake them, so that like maybe one day foils will be good enough and you can sit on like a group of swells and you go over the first one gets to you and you ride it for a bit and it'll overtake you, and then you ride the one behind it and then the one behind that, and then you do the best squat boost ever done and just overtake one and then overtake the next one, then you can ride all three again, and
yeah,
like that'd be just the ultimate. um I mean, for your average speed, it would be
yeah.
through the roof. But
uh,
if I think,
explain the squat boost. I think probably people will be scratching their heads, wondering what it is. But
yeah, right, fully. So it's finding the right height where your foil is nearly going to breach is what I start with, and then I step forwards and just squat down. So you do have to watch your weight with your back foot and your front foot, but it's pretty much because you're at that real high point on the mast, you have to go into this squat and lean forwards to keep it in the water. And it's almost like it adds extra weight to your body or to what you're riding.
Yeah.
So that it just creates so much more speed, because when you push down on the foil it's about to breach, it just moves forwards. Like it gains like speed, and it's a weird thing where it just holds more speed, and it's like the faster it goes, the more it wants to lift, but the more you lean forwards.
Yeah.
So it just keeps wanting to push you forwards.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. You don't do anything and you just accelerate. You just squat down and lean forwards, and it just pushes you forwards faster than anything else.
Yeah. Oh, I only really started playing around with it, I think, I think when I spoke to Kane on the podcast. I'd seen you doing before, and I'm like, I'm not sure it makes any difference. But then I tried it myself, and there's no question. It's like, it creates this like, it creates more speed out of doing it. And I was thinking about the other day. So obviously by leaning forward, getting your weight lower, it's like there's more weight in front of the foil, and leaning forward, it creates more speed, but then forces it forward. But I wonder if it's also a little bit of generally at those speeds when you're doing the squat boost, you're going faster than the wind, and therefore you're getting wind in your face. So I'm wondering if by standing up, like I'm a sail, like I'm actually blocking the wind, but by
100%.
getting low,
it's
you're
like
getting
a
like
cyclist
aero
going down a hill.
Yeah, get the helmets on, get the Kathy Freeman suit on. Away you go.
Oh, that'd be unreal. Because
Yeah.
where I kind of what made me think about it and start doing it was I was listening to a podcast you did, and you're talking about how I think Dave Kalama would be going faster than you or beating you on this old like old school foil, and you've got the new whiz bang one, and he's still going faster than you.
Yeah.
And he must, I don't know how much he weighs, but he must be a bit more than us.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm only mid 70s.
Yeah,
and he's
I'm
got
like,
to be pushing 90s to 100s, surely.
Yeah.
Like, I've never met the guy, but just looking at his physique, he looks a lot heavier than me.
He's not as tall as people think. He's pretty stocky, but I reckon he's 200 pounds, I think. So it's like 90, 95 kilos, whereas I'm like 80 to 85 kilos. So 10 kilos more than me. And I guess I'm 10 more than you. So he's that extra double.
He's got that weight to lean forwards. He doesn't have to lean forward as much.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Get that weight forwards. He just steps a little bit and he's doing it.
Yeah. So okay, that's where you got it from. Like, how do I make myself heavier? And you develop that sort of squat boost. So sick. I've played around with it a lot actually when I was up in Cairns, because the conditions were like, it's consistently good, but there's not many really big bumps. But when you're maxed out, you do that squat boost and you just hold your speed up and over, up and over, up and over. It's just
in bay runs, you just overtake bumps doing it.
Yeah.
Just go straight past things. It's like,
yeah.
I'd have to be pumping as hard as I could to just go past these things, but now I'm just squatting down, leaning forwards.
Yeah.
And I just go straight over them. It's like, wow.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Unreal.
Yeah. You need speed, I guess, before you do it. But it's once you have the speed, it holds the speed so well.
Yeah. You got to almost like sit high on a bump and then drop down the bump and do it while you're dropping down.
Yeah.
Otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah. Otherwise you're doing this weird squat thing and it's like, didn't work. You got to stand back up.
It's a weird thing that seems to use a fair bit of energy too.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't know, for me, maybe I'm just tensing up, but it always fires my glutes up and my knees up a bit. They're always like
probably with your bung knee at the moment too. I think there's a lot in foiling, and I think that's like just another thing. I really think the aerodynamics makes a big effect too. You know, the windage, because we're going faster than the wind at that point. That's the other thing, I guess. So people always say like, so I want to pose this to you. So, you know, like on a 30, 40 knot day, the wind's howling, but when the swell's really big and I guess there's no wind chop, so it's just sort of almost swell. But then you have those like northeasterly days where it's been blowing northeast for a long time, but the wind's only sort of 5 to 10 knots. But the mid period energy makes the run faster than what the wind would suggest. So like, would you prefer to be out in, like, say, I guess a bay run that's blowing 40 knots where there's, I guess it's all wind chop and it's like, sort of 5 to 6 second period, or like 5 to 10 knot ocean run where there's sort of 7 to 9 second period? You know what I mean?
Ocean run for sure.
Yeah. And I guess why is that?
Because you've just got bigger bumps to play with.
Yeah.
Like, if it's a nor'easter and it's like day 3 of a nor'easter and the wind's nor'east and it's like 10 knots, 12 knots, you still get up.
Yeah.
If that was southerly, you'd be struggling.
Yeah.
You'd be having a horrible time. But because it's nor'east, you get up and you go and you're surfing bumps like it's a beach break.
Yeah.
It's like doing a shore run, but you're out to sea.
Yeah.
So it's super fun. Like
so
you've got to really be able to identify when the conditions are still going to be user friendly, when there's no wind.
Yeah.
And then you can go.
So that's the reason I ask that, is because a lot of people, they won't look at doing a downwinder unless, sea breeze here, they got red, yellow, green arrows, and green is windiest and red is least windy generally, unless you flipped it. But a lot of people will wait for green arrows to downwind. And I always say to them, why are you not going today? The swell is, 3 foot, 7 second northeast. It's like, oh, it's only 10 knots. I'm like, forget about the wind strength, because we're not, I guess the reason I ask, we're not riding the wind. We're riding the bumps that are created through wind. So whether the bumps are created on the day or they've created over 3 days, the strength of the wind isn't so important. We're not sailing, I guess. We're surfing.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing that's what separates a southerly and a northerly. Because the northerly you can do that, southerly you can't. Well, I can't. It's just a big workout.
Yeah, it's
not enjoyable.
Yeah, more good northeast. I think especially it was interesting when I did that. I did a little bay to Palmy whenever that southerly was a couple of months ago, and that was a good one because as you mentioned, there were a few different swells. There was like the wind swell, there was the mid period, then there was the longer period. But the angle of the coastline, the eastern suburbs compared to the northern beaches, is a fair bit different. It felt like it was like probably had a little bit of southwest that day. And
that's what you want for where we are.
Yeah. And then as soon as I got around, like past Manly, southwest, it felt more offshore. So it felt more southwest, I guess, but obviously just a different coastline. So it's like sort of that and that. So the northeasterlies on the northern beaches is probably more onshore than the eastern suburbs. It's like more cross shore for you guys than it is for us, I would imagine, based on that day.
Yeah, for sure. Because a nor'east, when I started doing nor'easters, was nearly felt like you couldn't do it from North Bondi to Maroubra.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to get to Little Bay. Well, I mean, it wouldn't, but it would. The last bit of the last 3 Ks would be shit.
Yeah.
You'd be cutting out to sea and then coming back across it. It'd just be too hard and
too
be
offshore.
Crazy backwashes.
Yeah.
And so I used to think I had to wait for a northerly or a nor'easter.
Yeah.
Because you get to Clovelly and then you got to cut out to sea a long way. You're spending 2 Ks of your run going sideways and out to sea.
Yeah.
Like, you're not trying to ride bumps. You're trying to go dead across them and flick off the back and onto the next one and flick off the back and onto the next one. And you're just going like that out to sea.
Oh, so you're trying to surf further out to prevent ending up on the beach?
It would prevent ending up at the cliffs.
Yeah.
Because there's a big stretch from Clovelly to Maroubra, which is at least half the run. That if you come in, you're climbing up a cliff.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Because Clovelly's between South Head and Bondi, isn't it? It's
yeah.
That stretch of coast is a bit of a different angle from.
It's like Wedding Cake Island. You got Wedding Cake Island to kind of guide you. You want to be out like 500 meters a K out from Wedding Cake.
Yeah.
To make it to Maroubra comfortably.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a rough one.
Yeah. I've only done one downwinder on the eastern suburbs. I'll have to get over there with some of the. I know there's a bit of a crew going now. Josh and Jeremy have finally. I think they're up for it now. I think Josh. I'm getting Josh on the podcast soon a little bit, and Jeremy too. But they spend a lot of time doing day runs, sort of upskilling, and
Yeah, heaps of time.
yeah, yeah. I think they're Josh has done a couple with you from what I hear, and hasn't had the most success. But he's determined, that's for sure. It doesn't come natural
Very.
for him. which is
He's
why
getting there.
which is why he's going to be a great person to chat to. Like, you're a freak. You literally did 2 botany runs, then you joined me for one of the day of days ocean runs. Like, and you go, I was giving you a hard time the other day because you only made it to Whaley. But if that was your first ocean run, that's freaking amazing. Like, it's to come in at Whale Beach is still like, Zane doesn't come around the corner to Palm Beach very often. He lives at Avalon, so he just goes in there if it isn't perfect for him. And
Yeah, that come around that corner is a long way of
yeah,
not much.
yeah, it gets kind of pretty offshore pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's got to be southeast, really. The best days are when you start. It's like south southwest. That's like the perfect angle. I feel like like almost south of south southwest. Like, it's just in between. And then as soon as you get
Yeah,
from
185, 190.
yeah, exactly. And then as soon as you get to like Mona Vale or like Newport Reef, if the wind goes southeast there, it's going to be an epic one because the wind kind of bends with you, because you want southwest from Manly to Longreef, and then you want south from Longreef to Avalon, and then southeast from there to Palmy. You know what I mean? Because the coast
When
does
does that
like
ever happen?
I've had it a couple of times. Like, you start off and
Really?
it's like crazy, like so good. You feel like you're sweet, and then as you go, it just the wind, like, you get like a squall and it pushes you in. It's crazy. But I've had a lot where I've started at Manly and it's too southeast, and you've got to work to get around Longreef, and then from there it's decent. Or more often than not, it's more south, and the last 3 or 4 k's from Bangali to Palmy is flat water almost. It's like blowing you out to sea.
You're right.
I'm conscious of your time. I know we got to sort of wrap it up, but do you want to leave anyone with some I guess some thoughts, anything you want to chat about while we're
Yeah, I'm not sure.
What about a little bit on board design? Because I know you're, I guess, the 6 by 27 aviator, which is sort of more of a surf's up than it was a downwind board. What are you riding now?
I've got a 6.1 Kalama.
Yep.
The E3.
Yep.
Which I like. I seem to be able to get it up in quite light conditions. I like it. I was freaking out that 6.1 was going to be too big. I was like, I'm going from 95 liters to 105 and an inch bigger. I was like, am I making a mistake here? And I was like, stop being such a pansy. Just do it. Bite the bullet. Try something different. And yeah, it's really good. I like it. But I mean, there's so many different options now. Like, I feel like every month someone brings out something new.
Yep.
So I think you need a quiver of downwinding boards now, which is terrible because they're not cheap.
No.
And it's just like an extra couple of grand you got to spend for the right conditions. You're like, oh, is it even worth going foiling on this day?
If you had one, so it's like, why do you say that? Why do you think you need a quiver? Like, what's the thought process behind that?
Well, I'm seeing everyone riding these long, skinny boards, and I think you just open your chances of getting up in light wind on those. I haven't personally tried one, but to me, that's what it looks like, because you just carry more speed when you're paddling like a clubby board sort of thing. So your chances of getting up are going to be so much higher. And because they're so much longer, I feel like the bump's going to hit the back of the board, and it's got so much time to come through and past you and catch you so that you get up, as opposed to a small board where it hits the back of you and you need to be ready to get up.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
That's just what I see.
Yeah.
On it. So I'm psyched to try one, but just got to get my hands on one.
So what the longest board you've used is a 6.1? Is that currently? Yeah. So you went from 6.0 to 6.1.
But I also like the feeling of a prone board when I'm downwinding.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about
I
that.
want to be able to turn and move around my feet without feeling like I'm going to hit the wave in front, or I want to be able to surf, do carves, things like that while I'm foiling.
Do you feel like you can go as fast on a prone board as you can your sups?
No, because I don't have the weight.
Yeah.
I feel like the
So
sup is faster.
the squat boost doesn't work on the prones as well, I guess. Is that
Mm.
accurate? Yeah.
Yeah. It does, but not as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because of the length, or do you think it's the volume, or do you think it's a combination of everything?
I
All
think
the
it's the
weight.
length because you just can't get as far forwards.
Yeah. 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 It's like if you get too far forward, then you're more likely to the leverage point is
Mm. It's
yeah.
more that and that. Whereas on the sup, you've got more time for that
Yeah.
moment where it wants to kick up or drop down. It's a slower um, point, I guess, a pivot point.
Yeah. So on a really big day, like the Manly to Palmy we did for your first ocean run, would you now, like if you had the option of proning or supping, would you want a downwind on a sup board or like 30 liter prone board? If there was no problems
I
getting up.
honestly don't know. I think I'd still ride the sup
Yeah.
just for sheer comfort of it being safe.
Yeah. Almost like, to me, I feel like I can hold down a bigger foil with the sup easier. So I like
Yeah,
max out better.
definitely.
But then for the same, okay, so then the same thing, say it's 5 knots and um maybe it's a northeast run and it's 5 knots, but there's residual wind swell. Would you prefer to be on the sup or the prone?
Probably the sup again
Yeah,
because
okay.
you've got a paddle.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be interesting to be on a prone with a paddle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like maybe that would be add a whole new element of speed because you
Yeah.
got such a little amount to move yourself forwards. When you put the paddle in, you might jump further forwards faster.
Yeah.
But I don't know. How do you even try that?
I think
Do
you
you
could.
take a ski and then
Yeah, have him hand
or,
you the paddle.
or yeah, like tie the paddle to your back and chip in off a point and then use the paddle on the prone?
Good. Like I've like proned and a mate was supping and he's like handing me a paddle while I pump past him, just in the surf, and you can fully use it's the advantage of the paddle obviously is that when you get close to stalling, you can dig yourself out of trouble basically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like
that's what
up and over kind of thing, with a paddle, you can definitely, if you don't pick the gap quite perfectly, you can sort of paddle your way up the hill and back over down the other side. Yeah, I wonder if because a lot of people
that's one we got to try, I reckon. Just
yeah,
on like the little point to point, like a narrowbeam to Brownwater or something, would be pretty sick.
yeah, with the paddle. It'd suck if you came down and you've got the paddle on your back and you got it'd be like,
It'd be horrible.
stupid idea. Whose idea was this? Do you think you'd be able to use a smaller, like, do you think if you're using a prone board downwind, you'd use a smaller foil?
Yes.
So you'd therefore
Yeah.
go faster. Like you wouldn't be
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah,
you're like
for
more
sure.
solid, locked in on the sup, but you're probably using
Yeah.
a bigger foil most time. Whereas if you're using a 30-liter board downwinding, you're probably using a foil, like the 850 is probably going to be more your go-to.
Yeah, on a less windy day.
Yeah.
You could get away with it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be cool. And okay, actually, what are your thoughts on the hand paddles?
I haven't tried them.
Yeah.
At first I wrote it off because I just didn't like the thought of having these two things on my hands while I'm trying to stand up, and it just would be annoying. But now I see people getting up with them regularly and quickly.
Yeah.
So I might have to give Jordan from Hand Paddle Co a little bit of a call and test them out for myself, I think.
Yeah.
Have you tried them? You've tried them, haven't you?
Yeah, I've tried them. I think they're good, and I think for someone who has no SUP experience, like I think for someone like yourself, if you'd bought a SUP and tried to paddle in on your knees with the hand paddles, you probably would have had quicker success. But I think the fact that you've now learnt to SUP, you probably wouldn't want, like, it's like this.
Go back to it.
You wouldn't go back with it. It's like the ceiling's lower. Like you can only go so far, I think. Like, and obviously still early days, but with the SUP, I feel like you can paddle up smaller foils in worse conditions because the movement from jumping up to your feet to then foiling, there's a pretty big gap there, and you got to be pretty snappy and you got to be on a pretty good downhill. Whereas in a SUP, because you got the paddle, you can get up on a pretty ordinary bump and sort of
And
force
just
it
keep
up,
paddling, like
keep paddling. Yeah. Keep
muscle your way through it.
keep getting speed through it. Exactly. So that's where I'm at with it. And I've in good conditions, I think it doesn't matter. But on like a mediocre day or a bad day, I would hate to be on. I did one run from Little Narra to home, like at South Narra, which is only like 4Ks. And the first K, I sort of gave myself the chance to get up and going, and I didn't get up and going that first K, and so I chipped in at the point at Northie, and then I downwinded from there.
Yeah, wow.
So, but I was underfoiled even once I got up. So,
Yeah, that could have been the difference to not getting up.
I got on foil plenty of times, but I didn't, like, from foiling on my knees to getting to my feet I came off 4 times doing that in the kilometer stretch. So that was the problem.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, stay tuned. I'll keep you updated. I'd actually love to see you try them. Probably not with your knee at the moment, but when you recover, I think
I can't kneel.
No, you wouldn't be able to do it right now. No way.
You do like the bodyboard drop knee.
Yeah. Just boogie foil downwind. Do the flippers like Matt Costa.
Oh God, hell no.
Yeah, he's a bodyboarder at heart.
Something's the easiest one for me.
Yeah. Well, it's easier on the body. I've got rashes and bruises all over me from doing the prone stuff. It's hard on the body. But yeah, let's wrap up there. That's about an hour. So
Sounds good.
Thanks for your time, Perth, and
no worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to have you on, and we'll have to get a downwinder in soon.
100%.
Yeah, see how that knee
We'll have to do the little bay to Palmy soon.
I'd love to do that with you. I reckon
towards the end of summer when we start getting those big fronts.
Southerly busters coming through. Yeah. It was a sick run. Honestly, it was.
Yeah.
I think it's 50Ks. I think it's, I'll have to double check, but
that sounds right, because it's about 18 from Little Bay to the harbour.
Yeah, and then and
Manly to there is like 28 again, isn't it?
Yeah. It's 24, 25 from like Bower to Palm Beach, but you've got Southhead to Bower, which is another 3 or 4Ks. So you're pretty much there.
You'd be very close.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right.
Sweet. Well, catch you later, mate, and I'll speak to you soon.
Talk to you soon.